Say good evening.
How are you?
Well, I don't even have a quorum. Hey.
I'm fat and she's sassy.
You know, I decided somebody had to show up.
Well, we have the Fourth Estate and a citizen. What could be better?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna, is there like public comment?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, I got a public comment either, so.
as if we have a meeting.
That's, we're one down on a quorum.
Well, we're two down on a quorum. We need five.
Oh, do we?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
5 for quorum, 4 for a vote.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, I forgot.
We don't even have a quorum.
It's a regular meeting, our social go home.
Yeah,
I mean, I've done that
well,
before.
take you out to lunch.
Behind yourself?
Doesn't have to be board.
Well,
Be there.
you know,
Marcy
the
may
people
feel
who are so hot to trot to get this done in a timely fashion are currently not present, so that doesn't really,
Doesn't bode well.
with one exception.
Oh, am I getting riled
No.
up? Is she
Not
being-
me.
She being sassy? Sassy in front of the press?
Uh-oh.
She's just being herself.
There could be one
He
sassy
knows
person.
what we want.
Yes, controversy.
We want efficacy, and
I'm always on time.
And-
My mother always told me from a child, you're never gonna be too important to make people wait. Don't be ridiculous. You're never gonna be that important.
well, I grew up in New Jersey, and you didn't show up late. Utah has a
They're notorious.
terrible.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it's statewide? I thought it was a Moab thing.
It's a Moab
No,
thing.
it's
Do you think it's all of Utah?
I grew up in Illinois, and we did not show up late.
Oh, wow.
No, it's a
It's
Utah
rural. It's probably a rural.
I think so too.
If anything, my dad.
Or no, not rural, western, early
Yeah,
US.
he wanted,
Yeah,
he
me
wanted to
too.
be on,
Me
there
too.
5 minutes.
I had a project in Provo through the planning facility, and they were 45 minutes. And I
That's dreadful.
had an attorney that was costing me a lot of money per hour.
Yeah.
Oof.
I was a wreck.
Watching the meter go round and around.
Yeah, well, he was just sitting there dumb as a rock and charging me every minute.
However, I will say that the three of us that are sitting here are retired.
That's true.
And
Am I
people
retired? I've never lost my job.
Count
I've got to have the same job all the time.
Count me in.
Our
I got the
retired
mindset.
is, okay, so you're still working, but
Yeah, I'm so.
But I got the
you
mindset,
have the advantage of proximity. You know, these other people have jobs they gotta kind of steal away from. Yeah.
They got make believe.
You don't even have a quorum. You're thinking you guys aren't requiring 5 for a quorum.
We are required by.
Yes.
No.
No.
No,
Yes.
you never were. Both of them are 4s now. 4
No.
for a quorum and 4 for a vote. I'm positive. It used to be 5 for a vote to pass a vote. That's
Yes.
what you changed.
I thought it was 5 for quorum,
It's
4
always
for a
been
vote.
4 for a quorum. Right.
But it doesn't matter. We ain't got nothing.
I know. We got nothing. But
Except that she's.
it wouldn't make sense to have
she's
5 for a
Walt
quorum
Disney.
and 4
We've
for a
got
vote.
Walt
Yeah.
Disney and Drag.
Sure would.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I guess that would, yeah.
And I
But
think
it's not
that's what
5.
it is.
It's not 5 for a quorum.
There is
Oh.
our buddy Steve.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we need you,
Hi, bud.
mister. Cricket will be here.
How are things?
Good. How are you guys doing? I've got my homework assignment coming, and I got a hold of Mallory. And she's getting permission from the superintendent, so.
Oh,
Have you put your hands on the bylaws yet?
I didn't bring my notebook.
You on paper?
I came right from Salt Lake City this morning.
Okay.
Well, that's the other rule in Utah. The further you are from the event, the earlier you get there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
I do you need paper? I got some. Thanks. I need this.
If you need me to copy off anything for everybody, I will. Hi, Steve.
Hello. Do we expect Walt and Jeremy are
No.
not coming? Cricket?
Cricket's unknown.
Well, let me double check the bylaws for quorum.
Thank you.
We have not started. I need to have them in here anyway, so I'll put it.
Oh, but Steve's got them.
Huh?
You got the bylaws handy, don't you? Attorney that you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like 97% sure it's 4, because we changed. Well,
It was 4 for vote, 5 for quorum. That's only my memory, which is terrible.
Too many papers. Is it? I like papers.
Calendar.
I have an RPO on engagement for this already. I have it.
4 and 4?
I have,
Okay.
so we're good.
Call this puppy to order.
Okay. Time is a little after. It's 12:05.
Oh, we gotta get it recording.
Oh, yep, you're right.
Ruth, we need you.
She went
Would you start the tape?
In case anybody wants to check me, this was,
I believe.
let's see, we got two.
There she is.
Hi, girls.
Whew. I've been watching you.
I'm raising around.
I've been watching you. You've worked long days, girl.
Yes,
Whew.
I wanted water, but they're out of water in the pop machine, so I guess I get it water. Sorry.
We're just glad you're
Steve
here.
just got here 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, I'm.
Good job. Thank you
Yeah.
for making me look good.
See that? I try.
Thank you.
And you can be like, well, he was in the chair and he's showing
Now
up
we're
late.
gonna turn the ringer off, and we'll be good.
Mr. Chair, let me know when you're ready, and I'll press record.
Okay, we're ready. Time is 12:06, and we are going to call to order the meeting regarding the change in form of government study committee regular meeting. We'd start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everybody rise?
You got the date.
The date, oh, I'm sorry, and the date is May 10th, 2019. And I will lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Do we have, everybody being the diligent readers that you are, we have last meeting's minutes, April 19th. Did anyone see any changes?
Yes.
Marcy?
Under future considerations, the second, I guess it's second paragraph, Marcy suggested, is the beginning of the paragraph. The last sentence in that paragraph should read, Jeremy agreed to meet with Bob to develop a timeline for the next meeting, not Marcy.
Any other changes or any objections to that change, or any changes apart from that? With the one change, would everybody in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, passes. We'd now like to move on to general reports, and I'd like to turn over for the first item B, turn the time over to committee member Greenberg.
I still have not heard back from the Office of Legislative Research and Counsel, and at this point, I'm not expecting to. And as I keep thinking about it, I don't know that we need them.
Any other discussion on that matter? Seeing none, we'll move on to C. Mr. Day shot out an email. He's indicated that he will get follow-up from them on either Monday or Tuesday of next week. So that's essentially his only update that we have. So we'll just continue that item for our next time we meet, which will be next week on the 17th. Any other discussion on that matter?
Well, this
Yes.
might be the place to mention, as we were interviewing elected officials, at least I discovered I was laboring under a misapprehension about the county attorney's offer to work with us on the ordinance. I had thought that she meant that she would draft it for us, and we learned that that is not the case. She cannot draft it for us. Yeah, well, you're smarter than I am, what can I say? But I just wanted to put that on the table. We obviously, we need someone else to draft it. We're kind of wondering as a result of that whether there's somebody here in town who might be willing to do it pro bono or very inexpensively.
Cricket?
Is that why we're getting outside counsel to help us with that?
Well, we haven't determined that we are, but
Well, I was gonna make a motion to put it on for next, that we need to do that, because she can't,
right.
she's gotta be disinterested third party, and she's
Yep,
not.
yep.
So I figured we were waiting for bids before we could make that next step. So,
Judy?
But is there somebody, I mean, this is a fairly simple form that we're going to be doing. Isn't there maybe somebody here in town that could do it at a lesser cost? You know, is
The-
there some, you know, we could.
well, I just think that's why we're getting bids. And we look at
Okay.
those bids, and if they don't seem out of the norm, then we maybe get some bids local.
Your only other attorneys that I know of in this area that would do that type of work, honestly, would be Miss Salone, maybe Steve Russell. Apart from that, there are some other dormant attorneys that are here that don't practice.
Yeah, we don't want to do
Uh,
No, I'll be happy to call Steve and see if
Okay.
he thinks that he could do it and if he's interested and what he might charge. I kind of wonder if he might do it pro bono because he's done quite a bit of pro bono work for local entities.
Cricket?
Well, I just don't know that a local is disinterested, third party.
Marcy?
Well, it's gonna be checked both by Christine.
Well,
And us.
We also have an attorney of our own here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you can do a dog license and, you know, and include it in it, you know.
Marcy?
Are the
Yeah, go ahead.
attorneys that we're contacting for bids, have they had any experience
Yeah.
doing other, I think that's kind of imperative,
The-
in my opinion.
Yeah, the attorneys that we've reached out to do government work. The only reason why I mentioned Mr. Russell is because I know it would perhaps be one of the areas that he handles. The attorneys here, though, it would be near impossible for them to specialize in municipal government, change of government formation, because you don't have that amount of work.
I think you get what you pay for, and I think that we should be seeking people that have that expertise.
Ruth?
Well, I just was thinking about, yes, we have an attorney, you all have an attorney on this committee,
Yeah.
but they're
It's not your role.
not your role. Right, yeah, so.
100%, yeah.
yeah,
It's
I
not
thought
my,
you were
it's,
gonna say that.
yeah, and just, there is the possibility that we could draft this up ourselves, but by no means am I legal representation of the board. I'm merely just a member like you. So just imagine I am a translator instead of an attorney. It's probably a better thing to imagine.
Which we're gonna need anyway.
Perfect. So, outside of those comments, is there anything else that we have on item C? Seeing none.
Well,
Oh, yes.
Cricket would like it as an action item on the next agenda.
Oh, yes. Could we add that as an action item to discuss retaining counsel, retaining outside legal counsel?
Once we have the bids.
Yes, and it is my understanding that Jeremy should be providing those to us. We may have to put both item C on for next week and the decision if we want to make it to retain outside counsel. I don't know if that's enough time for us to review the different bids.
I think
So
it'd
we're
be
talking
fun.
about the ones we received already from Snell and Wilmer.
Correct.
Mhm.
That's been in the
Plus,
paper. And
who
then
was
the
Jeremy?
Clyde Snow was
Clyde
the
Snow.
one we're waiting on, just those two, is that right? So if we
Right.
get the one from Clyde Snow, then it goes on this next week, otherwise it waits till whenever the next one is in June.
Correct. That's my
I mean,
understanding.
that's what we have to do, don't you believe?
I
mean,
would agree.
Other than voting to retain outside counsel,
And then we'll
I
have to
think
be a
that
vote.
can actually be all at one time.
Yeah, and I
Just-
don't even know that we need to make that decision. We have to do it.
Well,
I mean, there's no
I-
question.
I agree, but it didn't seem to be like that everybody else does. So.
Well, that's because some of us didn't understand what the
Well, I
county
just-
attorney's role would be.
Yeah, well, I
Yep.
just knew that you have to be a disinterested, from what I read, everything in here's gotta be disinterested.
Right.
And that's why the council can't really be involved, and that's why the attorney can't, because they're not disinterested.
Exactly.
Speaking of attorney, do you know if Attorney Salone was going to report on item D?
Yes, as of yesterday, she was, and she was gonna wing it and give you all what she had, rather than have copies for you. So I expect her to be here. I haven't heard anything more this morning,
We'll just pass the matter for the time being and plan to come back on it.
so that's a table.
Yeah, we'll table it, sorry. We'll table the matter and return to it. Moving on to item E. Ms. Still?
So you guys have a copy of my correspondence with Eric Gov't from Tooele. And he actually, I don't know if he was corresponding with Christina Sloan, in April, but he was one of the people from Tooele that kind of reached out when we started this process, and
Actually,
you reached out to
Council
him.
Member McGann had been speaking with him. She gave me his number, and I contacted him and hooked him up with.
So anyway, he contacted us, and you can read through this on your own. But I did contact him again just to kind of follow up on some questions that I had, and I thought his answers were very responsible and kind of thoughtful, and you can read through them. You know, the thing that really kind of struck me was create hard deadlines for research and community engagement and stick to them. Initially he said interview and survey county department heads, employees, and elected officials. We've done great on that. We have plans to conduct some public meetings to solicit citizen feedback. And I thought that his comment, citizens need to feel well-served, educated, and informed, and I think that's where we need to put some of our energy as we move into this process. So and I think that the radio interviews will accomplish that. I think, print media is trying to get people to pay attention. And other than that, I thought his answers were informed. I thought the answers about salary were kind of interesting. And the idea that we need to remain impartial and give all forms equal consideration and, weigh them in whatever our criteria becomes. So I don't know if anybody else had any response to his.
I thought it was great.
I do too.
It was very helpful.
I think we're on the right track. He seemed to support that.
And I like the fact that he also laid out budget, about guesstimates about how much they spent out on the print cost, kind of mirroring what we've talked about. So that's good.
He talked about Facebook, and I don't know where we stand on that. I do think that
I checked, it's not there.
I do think that engaging the youthful population probably needs to happen electronically somehow, and so we need to pay attention to that.
At the end of the last meeting, Jeremy had said that he would see what he could do to get a Facebook page going, and I did go ahead and check just a couple of days ago, and under Grand County, under Study Committee, under Form of Government, under Change, I couldn't find anything.
Well, I think he was finding out the rules and the pitfalls, because what we were hoping is that people couldn't comment, so that people couldn't be attacked, and he was saying, no, you can't stop people from commenting. So he was looking more into it. So I think that's the reason he hasn't started anything, because he wants to get the committee's approval.
Yeah.
So that's why he hasn't gone farther.
Yeah. Right, that does make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Any other discussion on item E? If not, we'll move on to item F, Council Member Till.
Do you want
I
to
don't
say
know why
what
this is my
I'm going to read
job.
out what the item is?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
the viewing
approving
purpose.
final modifications to the formally accepted flyer as an informational handout for engaging voters, continued from April 19th, 2019.
So I'm confused. Which one of these are we looking at?
I've got.
That's a good question.
Look at all of them.
Yeah.
So there's the one that is accepted, that you all accepted
This
last.
is the one
Subject
from the
to
very
edits.
first-
No, that's not.
No.
It says revised on it. The tall one, the 8.5 by 14 is revised, suggested revised. The one in the packet that is regular 8.5 by 11 is not that one. It's a different one. There's three. Yes, the one that's in the packet.
Where'd this one come from?
So there's three. So the small one in the packet is the one you all approved, expecting edits. And so now
So
you've
then
got
there are two versions with edits.
Two versions with edits. So this is where your discussion comes in.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to walk you through my suggested edits.
Yes.
I jumped on this actually after I read your correspondence with the Tooele guy, with Eric Gov't, particularly his response to the first question concerning surveys and open houses. And he said, great to educate and present all options. Surveys, the general public need to gather information and opinion rather than anything that could lead to a statistic. I'd recommend using questions to get feedback on what citizens feel is going well and what needs improving. You can take those suggestions and insider them as you continue to study. So I'm slashed and burned based on that recommendation. I didn't insert any new language, but I deleted a bunch of language in here. In the box, in particular, instead of the questions that were proposed, I'm suggesting we follow his advice and say we need to know what you think works well with our current system of government and what needs improving. And then from the second box below, I deleted the description of the forms of government and instead just made bigger the section below that. And those are the changes. I think I made a small suggestion in terms of the opening paragraph. So it says for county government, for voters to vote up or down at the ballot box instead of what it originally said, which was.
I have a question.
Yeah, Judy?
Bob, why don't we want to include on this thing what the 4 forms are?
Well, for one thing, it makes it too dense. I think maybe that's a separate piece. This talks about legislative and executive power. It talks about what our current form is, and it follows Gov't's advice to ask people's opinions about what's working and what isn't, rather than which form they think we ought to adopt. He's afraid, and I think rightfully so, that we end up with a kind of statistical survey, but that doesn't really represent the community.
We're not really looking for votes.
No, we're not. That's why, Judy.
Marcy?
Well, I don't know, I think maybe some of this confusion is that we haven't really honed in on, what's the purpose of this piece? And for me, the purpose of this piece is to get the word out that we're in the middle of this process and that we're welcoming, opinion. And so I like the idea. We need to know what you think works well with our current system of government and what needs improving. However, I don't think we get from there to follow us and contact us. That's really what we want them to do. So we want anybody who gives a crap, we want them to get in touch with us. So I don't know. I think this middle part about the legislative and executive powers is a kind of,
Well, I was in the original. I just made the print bigger and moved it up.
Cricket?
right.
Well, I think we have to give them the 4 options. I mean, I think this is almost like hiding what the options are. Because this is like, we have to fix it. Well, how are we going to fix it? We're going to fix it with one of these 4 ways. And maybe we don't describe what they are completely. Maybe we just have the four names without, and then,
4 bullet
they
points?
go find the
4
definition.
bullet points.
But to me, this is more confusing. Like, okay, so how do we fix it? Well, we have these 4 choices, and they can look further into those. But we have one of 4 options, and maybe you just say county commission form, expanded county commission form, county executive council form, or county manager form.
And I got to tell you,
Then they can look into that, because I think this leaves me with way more questions. Like, okay, but
Marcy?
I don't know if it's necessary to include know this. You know, if the study committee's recommended form is something other than the three-person commission, I think that kind of pollutes what we're trying to get at.
I'm happy to
You know,
go with cutting
it sounds
anything.
almost kind of threatening, like, hello, if you don't get involved, we're going to end up with a three-person commission.
It's
Which
true.
I don't think that's our position.
Well, except that we've had a lot of questions, I've had a lot of questions from people who said, well, what happens if what you guys do is stupid? You know, and that this is a fallback position if we can't sell it, what we do.
Cricket?
I don't know that we have to say, if we don't do anything, that's automatically going to happen, because we're doing something. That's only if we don't do it, which we're already doing it.
Well,
So-
except we could deadlock.
Well,
That's possible.
and then, but that would be a final,
Can I,
Ruth?
I'm not sure that's accurate. Christina is on her way, so my understanding is you all make one single recommendation to the people for the ballot. If they don't vote on that, let's assume it's not the three-person commission, given the reports that you've given so far. If they vote against that recommendation, then it is going to be a three-person commission.
Right.
I think his
Okay.
deadlock was referring to us being
Yeah.
enabled to
Yes.
make a
Okay.
decision.
I just
That's
want
what
to make sure
I-
we all
Yeah, if we
on the same
don't come
page.
up with a recommendation, which is a possibility, slim but a
Oh, I
possibility.
see.
Sure.
Well, then it wouldn't go on the ballot. There's
Nope,
nothing for them
wouldn't
to
go on the
vote.
ballot.
So I think I like the layout. The layout's clean. I like the big box. I like those things.
Which one are you referring to?
To his,
Okay.
they're both done well.
No, there's three total. but-
Sorry.
okay.
So I've got Bob's revision. The thing that I think is distracting is it's almost like a new menu and saying we're canceling the Big Mac. And we've always had the Big Mac since this year, but it doesn't go into what the new options are. And that's what my beef with it, for not trying to be punny, is that. And I think that if we go through and just inform them of what the choices are, it's more informative than anything else, because they've been here for, well, however long that they've been here, and maybe they know or don't know. So that would be my 2 cents.
well, that's kind of what I'm saying, is we're saying there's a problem, but we're not saying these are your options to fix it. So, and I'm okay with not taking a lot of, just say we have one of 4 choices, and then these are the choices, and without a definition, these are the 4 choices, and they can look further
I
into
think
it
that's fine.
by going to the site.
We should
'Cause
say
I
that.
understand,
We should say that.
Exactly.
To learn more,
follow us,
Yep.
go here. I just feel like I understand this, but I don't understand this. I mean, this isn't answering anything, so that's why I think we should need to say. I really don't want it cluttered. I agree with that, because then people lose interest.
so if we just
So
took this out and put 4 bullets in,
Yeah.
I
I
like
think that'd be good.
I like the first paragraph on the old one that says Grand County must change its current form of government in response to House Bill 224, which became law in 2018. I think
so.
that's a critical,
except we don't care when it became law.
right, but
Do we?
people, it rings a bell with when they hear HB 224. That's why we're doing this. Whereas on the other one, it just says we must change its current form of government. People are going to go, why do we have to do that?
I agree.
It's
agree.
stated by law.
Yeah.
And I like on the first one, where at the ballot box is, these are just picky things for the voters at the ballot box, that's fine.
And that lets them know that they get to be involved and vote.
And then I would take out the know this and just say, the 4 options for a new form of government are county commission, expanded county commission, elected, blah, 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 to learn more of the details.
I think that's great.
Go here, give us your feedback.
Attend
Yeah,
Come
come
to
to
our
a meeting.
come to a meeting. I'd be happy to educate you. or explain, or pass out material, or whatever.
Okay, so who wants to go for version 4?
Well, so it sounds like you have a whole
You have
different
edits.
version.
Yeah, you have new
Sounds like you
edits.
just created a whole different version.
It's an amalgamation of
Oh, that's what I meant. But it is still,
Well,
it's not one of
amalgamate.
these.
So who would like to take on the task? Does anybody have this copy already laid out?
Yeah.
I don't know how we could get it. We approve it through email?
Maybe,
There's no way. This is open public.
Hmm?
You cannot approve anything by
No.
email.
but maybe I can do it if we, at some point, recess for 5 minutes. I could try.
Or do we want to put it on for next week?
I think we can deal with it right now. I think we're in pretty good agreement.
Okay,
How about we just, how about?
Do you wanna table them?
Marcy, just mark it up.
Well, wait, do we have it on the agenda for action though? I think we do, but let's see.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, that's good.
Okay. Just, can we come back to this?
You want to table it,
So
table this item?
the action of it.
Okay, we'll table matter F. Moving on to item G, approving initial newspaper editorial regarding the public engagement process.
So he just gave us?
I just handed you guys, it's proposed. It's kind of the beginning of a courtship, so I'm just giving them a little bit of background. I'm open to any insights, critiques. The things that I would like to do in the written paper, I don't like putting links or anything in there, so I think that's because it's annoying because you'd have to type it up. But if we give this to the Times or Sun News or somebody like that, that they could put in the links online to the different areas. But it's just a general, quick glaze over that says, hey, here we are, come follow us. I don't go into tremendous detail because they've seen this many times, and I more would rather have them come talk to us than anything else. So that's kind of what my goal is with this document. Yes, Bob?
I think it's great. I have one suggestion. Since we have not adopted a time schedule, I would just suggest in the last paragraph you delete next year and just say you will have the opportunity to vote on our recommendation.
I put soon and then I deleted it because I didn't think that was fair.
So let's just say you will have and
Okay, I'll
kind of
delete
beg the question of when and
the word next year. Any other changes that you folks have?
I think otherwise fine.
It will say instead what? You will have the opportunity to?
Yeah, it will just be,
Remove next year.
we delete next year and the comma.
Oh, okay.
And then capitalize year, of course.
Yeah.
I make a motion we approve it.
So with
That's correct.
Second,
approve it as corrected, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you, Steve.
Any
That was
opposed?
Mr. Greenberg seconding, is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Marcy, you good? Approve, deny? Approve. Perfect. So we'll get that. I will publish it to the Times. I've given them a proposed copy, but I'll make sure they have a proper copy, and I'll talk to them about that.
Sorry, that's just the one paper, right? And-
Yeah,
and
just
that's this next edition, the next?
Yes, I'll get
first
it in
available?
first available edition if possible. I believe the newspaper has a deadline of Tuesday.
Mhm.
Perfect. Moving on to item H, report on a possibility of regular public service announcements and/or an ad at a local radio stations. Continued from April 19th. Ms. Till?
So I'm looking at budget summary definitions here. So it seems like this would fall under public notices, technically.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then I sent y'all an email, but Jeremy and I talked a little bit about this, and I feel strongly that our local media works very hard to present important information to the community, both in the government sector, the nonprofit sector, whatever they consider newsworthy. And a lot of times we go to them and say, what can you do for us for free? And they're running businesses. So my proposal, I said, I don't want to play favorites, but if we had a little public relations / advertising public service announcement budget of $750, we could allocate $150 to each of our radio stations and our newsprint. The Sun News, the Times Independent, Moab Happenings, KZMU, KCYN, and that would be $750. And am I leaving any other major publication out? So it's very arbitrary. It's a budget figure. I figure, if we need to spend more money in one area, we can adjust that a little bit, but it was just a way to come up with a budget for public relations. That does not include our mailings, which maybe it should.
Bob?
So Marcy, are you suggesting that we give them gifts of money for
No,
services they
I'm
don't charge
suggesting that
for?
we purchase ads. That we
Even,
actually
even though
purchase
they
and
would
advertise
provide
them.
them for free?
Well, so for example, if we, I don't know technically what makes a public notice other than a public notice is here we're meeting. An ad would be the study committee is meeting and considering the topics of such and such and such and such. If you're interested, or I think a little box ad, or I don't know. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. That's
No,
why
I think that's that's fine with me. I just don't want to pay for what is provided for free. I don't think that's appropriate. But if we want to do display ads, I mean, we should pay for them.
And I,
Ruth?
oh, sorry. Just that, so we talk about the $10,000 budget that you all have for the professional consultants, but I want you to be sure you understand, that's what I was just looking for. There's also money specifically for public notices and for a few things like office supplies expenses.
In the
I've even
general
got-
county budget?
In the county council budget, as well as in the administrator budget, if we had to have overtime with one of my staff, we have that too. So there's a little bit more that was provided to you in the budget sheets before, so you have them, but I just wanted you to know that there is money in the public notices that is not part of the 10,000.
Well, and possibly they could do this, something similar to that in an ad.
The only thing that's missing is the advertiser, which
Fair.
is one of the most effective
I thought the same thing.
things in town.
Might look at adding that one, Marcy, because that gets
say it again.
Mischief.
the advertiser.
Oh, they're on my list.
Yeah, okay.
I just I don't have my list to look at right now.
It's okay. I would think they would almost be better for the locals than the more happening. Really.
I agree.
Really, this is just a way to set aside some money for that event. And then I think that Jeremy and I would be willing to kind of put together some kind of a little schedule of, or maybe an ongoing item on the agenda could be public service announcements for between now and the next meeting.
Yeah.
I think as we get more into this, we'll have more to say.
So at this
Is that
time,
a request, sorry, to have it on each agenda?
Isn't that,
so at this time, are you making a motion to approving any funds, or we just want to talk about this the next?
I would like to make a motion that we set aside $750 for advertising.
I'll second it.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Any opposed? None. Moving on to item J, review of study committee member lists for creating master distribution lists continued from April 19, 2019. So Marcy had made the wonderful suggestion to reach out to essentially the public liaison for the school district. I spoke to her today over the phone. She's getting permission to send me certain lists. They've got emails for all the parents in the entire county, but I don't know if the superintendent will let us have access to those. But she does have access to lists of other community members that she may be able to just give me outright. So at this time, I don't have those lists yet, but she said she'll email them to me as soon as she gets permission or authorization. And with those lists, we believe that we will cover the vast majority of Moab. Cricket?
Could we email it to the district and then they forward it so we don't actually have the parents?
So what she said additionally is that they have a Facebook page for every school, that they have a Facebook page for the district, and they have websites that they would be able to post it for us. And my question to her that I posed would be is if the superintendent or the school board, whoever her authorizing agency, would approve that we're not using them for an inappropriate reason. So they'll follow up with us about that.
If we could get this flyer into a PDF format that we could you could email her and then ask them to
Distribute it and put it
blast to
online.
their people.
So they don't have to
Well,
disclose.
They could forward the PDF to us.
The master list, yep.
Yep, and then we're out of it, but they're notified. In the
Chamber of
parents.
Commerce can do the same thing.
Exactly, and
That's a
probably
great
the
idea.
Rotary, I would bet.
Please duplicate.
I will follow up on that.
Please
um,
forward.
But if I would just ask, anything that we approve here, would the committee be against forwarding on to anybody else?
So you all have talked about other agencies like the Multicultural Center. It's all in the minutes.
Yep.
It's not all in one place necessarily, but
Farm
I think there's,
Service, BLM, I mean, there's a lot of.
So-
I think once it goes out, we don't have control of it anyway, and we don't want, our point is to distribute it, so it would be good if it just kept going and
I think
going.
the best thing we could do is say it's secret.
yeah.
Ruth?
Oh, I was just suggesting county employees as well. I mean,
Definitely.
That one I
Yes,
can.
absolutely.
Okay.
Private group.
So if,
So far and wide, as far and wide is what I'm hearing, right?
Yes.
so
far and wide.
essentially it would be each member, once we get something, we'll just try to send it out. Keep tabs on if you send anything out to who you send it to be able to report back
Oh,
to us. So anything, feel free to share, and this is to anybody that's
How
listening out
about, how
there.
about if
Bob?
we send it out, we just let Ruth know,
Shoot her an
so
email,
she can keep a list.
and so that we don't harass
Duplicate.
people
What
with.
what if we send it out and we CC her? or
Yeah,
That would be a
Yeah.
very intelligent thing to do.
Blind CC her, and then she
Yep.
sees what went, and that would
Yeah.
probably be the best way, to just blind, and then
Mhm.
she would see it went.
that'd be great. And then would you all want me to just let you know each meeting?
If you'll just keep a running
great.
list,
Yeah,
I
that'd be
think.
great. That'd be awesome.
Item K, any other discussion? Item J? No. Item K, approving proposed overall plan for public engagement. I think each of these issues has essentially touched on that. I don't know what overall other master plan.
That was asked to be on this agenda last meeting, so the word overall wasn't there, but
Okay.
there was definitely a request to have.
No, no, I think that is brilliant. I think we said it was a standing item, and that's the request, that we don't forget about these things. Cricket?
Well, are we gonna discuss our questionnaires?
Yeah, it's down below, yeah.
Okay, because that's the only thing I would add, is that outreach with our questionnaires. So.
No other, no, and nothing else on item K. Do we have any citizens to be heard? Oh, okay.
Oh, well, that would be.
Sure. Yep. On the mic, please, and
Who are you?
what's your name, and know that your time is limited to 3 minutes.
Oh, good. No, this won't be long. Carrie Dabney, I'm with the League of Women Voters. This is probably fairly timely, but I've just come to offer our services in any way. We do citizens education, and this has been a big deal for us. So if there's anything that we can do that you can think of, please ask us. I don't know that we can do, what we can do, but I would take it to the board and to the membership. So I know this is, this could be a long, drawn-out process. And the other thing, we're planning for our candidates debate, and I know there's been discussion on whether this will be on the ballot in 2019 or 2020. And it'd be nice to know at some point. I think you're still in discussion with that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
On
Any
that
other-
point, in the packet, there is a timeline, so it shows you when we have to decide, which is really coming up pretty fast, to get it on this year's.
Well, if there's no other citizens to be heard, let's move to presentations. Any
Did you want
presentations?
to
Yeah.
take the off
I-
the table? Yes.
Yeah, I was going to just get down to general business, and then we could give the
Sure.
time over to her. So there's no presentations, so we'd like to move to untable the previous item for Ms. Salone. It is item
Morgan
D.
County. Yeah.
Ms. Salone.
Sorry I'm late. A lot going on in the planning department around here lately. So I connected with Morgan County Attorney again just this morning about how they're doing. He said that they're still moving pretty fast. He's concerned his study committee is exhausted already. They did do a survey of the department heads and the elected officials, similar to what you have done. He is not sure to the extent they've had much of any public participation in their process so far. They have had public hearings, but there hasn't been much participation. That's consistent with what I had heard before, which was that their process is just not very controversial or interesting. Based on the survey of the folks in the county, they're expecting to recommend a 5-person expanded commission with a mix of districts and at-large seats. That's my understanding, his understanding. He also has this sort of tricky dance going on around with the optional plan, which so far they have not hired any professionals. They're trying to do it themselves. They keep asking him questions about the optional plan, and he's trying to figure out where there's a conflict of interest. The county attorney's office, of course, has to review the optional plan for consistency at the end with state code and the state constitution. So they're moving pretty fast. It's definitely going to be on their general election this November.
Are they changing districts? Did it sound like they were creating new districts?
You just said there would be a mix, so I'm not sure, but
And what's the population, do you know, in Morgan County?
nope, I can look it up right now.
I know they're a 5th-class county, so they're similarly sized to us in population.
11,873 people as of 2017.
We're even smaller than that.
Yes. And he said they have struggled a little bit with trying to model Tooele County's documents because they're so extensive and so well done that they're sort of overwhelmed by them. So I'm not sure how much they're really drawing from them in the end.
They're going for commission and
Expanded commission, 5-member.
so
Well, I would assume that would still be addressed in the optional plan, but he didn't specify.
Brings up the question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but I didn't think there could be something on the ballot that said whether or not an administrator could be part of the plan, or is that? That is possible. And the people vote on that. The people vote on that.
They vote on the plan overall.
The whole plan, so it's a yes or no.
Okay. I thought that the commission had the option to appoint an administrator or not have that position. If the people vote on it, then it's a done deal.
No,
we
that's
talked to
not
Gavin,
what we're
and
advised.
Gavin said that it would be breaking new ground to add that. That you could do the 5-man commission with a mandatory executive, but if it's breaking new ground, it has to be part of the ordinance. Otherwise, being that it's not spelled out in the optional plan and it's up to the commission later,
Right.
just hire.
Yeah, that was his advice.
That was his advice, we should do it that way. Okay.
Even
My
though-
guess is that's what Morgan County's doing, because they don't strike me as a break ground kind of county.
Well, it's the same thing where the commission has the authority to, for example, hire a budget officer.
Right.
Right? But if we made it part of the optional plan, then it would be mandatory.
But that's the fear, that's breaking new ground.
Yeah,
That's the
that gives you-
fear.
They
They're
give you the
not
right
sure.
to have it for 90 days, and then the new commission says, we didn't really like that in the first place, so what we're gonna do is now have 2 public hearings, we're gonna change it. It was breaking new ground.
yeah.
That's-
Gavin said if it's a county commission form, the commission retains executive authority, period. Even though our ordinance could
Designate.
call out an administrator, they're not bound by that. Because in fact, they still have executive authority. A council form is required to have either an elected manager or a hired manager. And they can't get rid of the manager in that case.
And our plan now, how does it address the administrator?
Hmm?
Our plan now, how does it address the administrator?
I can
It-
answer that.
It calls out that the council is expected to hire professional management.
It
And
doesn't
that
say
was-
professional management. Professionals, I mean, you've been given the copy by email, but professionals to carry out the day-to-day.
Yes,
But it does not say administrator or manager, it just says professionals. That could
Right.
very well just have been the department heads.
could be.
So that's an interpretation that has been looked
Yeah.
at from time to time in this county.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the sore points with the legislature, was that lack of clarity as to who's got what authority.
We also had difficulties with Utah state law with different administrators we've had over the period of time. We had one who was an attorney who said, you guys are trying to tell me I can do something, and the law says, no, this is what I am. So there's been confusion with both sides.
Great.
Any other discussion on item D? Seeing none, we'll move down to item L, approving proposed timeline for bringing study committee responsibilities to fruition. County Attorney Sloan?
All right. I spent a ton of time on this. I think Ruth probably spent a lot of time reviewing it. Statute is not uncomplicated. Let me find it here in the packet. Sorry.
I got a paper copy if you'd like.
Sure. I mean, I have my Excel, but I think I just want to make sure I'm looking at it. Thank you. Okay, so in creating this, as you can see by the statutory reference, I mean, I really had to go back through the entire thing in detail, cross-referencing a whole bunch of sections. These dates aren't laid out, obviously, in just one place, but they all trigger, really, from your first meeting, right? So I both went from election day back, and I went from your first meeting forward to come up with our deadlines. So your recommendations report and optional plan is due no later than 1 year after your first meeting, or 120 days before the election. So if we're going with 120 days before the election, that's July 8th. And of course, the study committee is responsible for that. So then Ruth and I worked on comparing this with actual dates. So you have a regular meeting set up on June 21, or you could, oh, that's funny. Okay, I added that 7/16, which shouldn't be there, so we should strike that from, that was my fault. Because we're limited by the 120 days before the election, which is our July 8th date. So let's strike the 7/16 special meeting. So we could, that means that in terms of your regular meeting schedule, you have until June 21, or you could call a special meeting on that July 8th date, which is our 120 days before the election. That's fast.
So at that point, we would have to have given our specs to our outside counsel.
And they would have to draft it.
They would have had to have drafted the ordinance and the plan for implementation. We would have had to have reviewed it and approved it. Excuse me.
When the whole
In
plan.
literally the next month.
In the
Right.
next 30 days.
And it doesn't have to be
It
council,
takes
of
30
course.
days to do just the request for proposal if you follow the council's policy.
Sorry,
If you
you
follow the
didn't.
county council's policy, it takes 30 days to even submit
Mm-hmm.
a request for proposal. Once it hits the papers and where we submit it, you can lose a month right there.
Right.
So
It's a nightmare.
what that suggests is it's virtually impossible to get it on this fall's ballot.
That's what I told
I do
everyone.
have one caveat. Less than 10,000, we don't have to send it out that way. We do 3 phone bids.
Okay.
3. We have 2 that we're looking at. So, yeah, they'd have to keep it under 10,000, which I think is doable.
I also talked about this in my interview with Judy and Bob, is that I don't think it needs to be council. I think there are some people in this community that could draft this optional plan. You have a lot of samples, and you just need someone with some drafting experience, and there are some folks around there. So it could be that you could find someone for $20 an hour willing to take a good stab at it.
That's if we're in a hysterical hurry. I'd rather it be done right than have it done fast.
Yeah.
Just between me and you and the post.
I'm with you on that, Judy. Particularly if we want to really engage the public, rushing it will create the appearance that we're trying to cut them out.
Right. Which, by the way, and I clarified this somewhere, we don't have any public hearing requirements. Those public hearing requirements was if we didn't have this public study committee process. Yes, so we don't have to do any of that.
The county council does have some requirements, though.
They do have to,
Yeah.
to adopt it by resolution, so.
Yeah.
But that's after what?
They don't have to do anything, they
That's
don't have to
what-
do 3 public hearings after the fact?
No, they don't. So
Okay.
let's keep going and we'll get into that. So ASAP, after the study committee approves the optional plan, the county council has to approve it by resolution. This is what I really don't like about this timeline, is it doesn't make any sense to me that the council goes through this public process before my review. But my review occurs after the city or the county has adopted the optional plan. I would like to be involved at this stage, but I also am not going to be able to move in an ASAP kind of way, to approve it. And so, you guys do need to have someone else draft the optional plan, but I would actually like to get involved in reviewing it as early as I can, and be in consultation with whoever you're have drafting it, so that we can be more efficient. I don't want the county to go through a public process to adopt by resolution, then I have issues with the plan. But technically, that's the way the statute is drafted. So we can play that by ear, depending on who you guys hire and how that's all moving.
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So, is it correct that, I think I heard you, but I want to make sure we're all hearing the same thing, that the county attorney cannot be the one to draft the optional plan?
Yep, no.
Yeah,
Because it
that's,
sounded like Morgan County was going to do that.
no, he doesn't
No.
want to either, and he agrees that there's a conflict, because the county
Yeah.
attorney has to review it.
That's right.
But he's being pulled in to consult on it more than he was hoping he would be. So he's trying to find the balance too that he feels comfortable with from a conflict of interest standpoint. And he said it has been, somewhat of a struggle for him so far.
So essentially, the plan that we have, the timeline that we have isn't workable. We need to probably draft something to make sure that we meet all expectations by the end of our other deadline, the 1-year deadline.
Right. So that would be March 7th, 2020.
But we could shorten it, and
Sure.
instead of,
Yeah, I don't want to work on another deadline until you guys have your
Doesn't have
plan.
to go
This
till
took
March.
probably 6 hours. I'm not kidding. Because you have to reread the statute like 5 times and cross-reference in all sorts of ways, and then triple check that, hey, that's a clerk process, that's not this process. Then you have to work with all these different meeting schedules. So I'm not going to spend any more time on this timeline until you guys are much farther into the process.
Judy?
Question, isn't the November 19th election a city election?
Yes,
Well,
It
not
isn't
the
a-
19.
the 19th,
It's the
2019.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a
November
county
5th.
election.
No,
This year is
it's
not.
a city.
19 is not at the city, so we'll be buying a special election. If we did it, that would be buying a special election then or whenever we do it.
Chris was telling me might be some county thing that's other than this.
I didn't remember if it was other than this or not. Let me see if
I
I
don't
can
know
pull that
either.
out.
That's okay.
But it would cost the county a lot to have a
This is
county
the only county.
election. Well, I think what he's saying is to have a county election this year, because the city would just do their own.
Yep.
But anytime there's county stuff, the county has to do the county and the city. So
Yep.
now all of a sudden the county's got a burden.
Yeah, okay.
So that
maybe
runs our costs.
Does that
runs our
sound right?
costs.
And the commission, the council would have to officially call a special election in order to do that.
I guess that's
this
right.
fall.
Chris can answer that question, but yeah, I guess
See
it
if
would.
I can pull up his email,
think it
just
would be.
so I'm not misquoting him, but I haven't found it yet.
Mhm. I don't know how much further we need to go based on how hard these deadlines are to meet, but, a couple of other things. My review actually triggers upon council referral to me, not technically study committee referral, but yet you guys also have a requirement to refer. And then the county attorney review also only has to happen 45 days before an election. And so even if we were trying really hard to make this happen, if I had any issues with your optional plan, we have to start the process essentially over. And that's another reason why I want to be involved early in reviewing your plan. This timeline assumes a perfect process, and it assumes the plan will be compliant, which I think it will be, but, this assumes a perfect process.
My thoughts would be, we look at this timeline, instead of reinventing the wheel, consider how many more months additional we need. 3 months, and just add 3 and then adjust to meetings to whenever the meetings would be. That way we have a deadline, because it's very valuable how it's laid out. All we have to figure is how much time. If we added 3 months to this, although there's not an election looming that we have to get done, I'd rather get it done more timely than not. We don't have to have an election there forcing us to get done, but we can look at deadlines. That's what I'd like to do, because we're pretty close to having deadlines, and it would be amazing to have them set. If we gave 2 additional months, added 2 months to everything, would that be sufficient time? 2 months from the deadline that we have listed. So it'd be 8.
I think that,
Some of those deadlines are not changeable.
I think that.
No, I
part-
mean, I'm sorry. I just mean not, the only things that we can change personally, not ignoring the election and ignoring some of the dates. I'm just saying by more or less 8/21. It's not our meeting date, but it's close enough that we just set these as our deadlines to just be set. We can adjust the scheduling around it, but just have something in place, because we've kind of said we should really have deadlines for a couple times, and now that this is the closest we've ever been, even though it's not workable, it would be great to have them to say, we actually have deadlines.
And
Bob, or Marcy, then Bob.
I think one of the issues, quite honestly, with this committee's schedule is that it's happening during our high season and during the summer and during vacation. And so people have already made plans, they're in and out of town. I think it is going to be much easier to have a consistent study committee schedule in, starting November 1st into the winter. People are typically
I don't
around.
want to drag this out because I think people will lose interest. I think we need to get it taken care of.
Well, I'm
So
with
Cricket,
you.
are you suggesting that we try to get this done, get it on the ballot this year?
That's what I like.
Marcy, I'm with you. I mean, we barely have a quorum today. We just have one additional person. And that, as you say, is not going to get better till the fall.
I think it appears like we're rushing and we're not going to get our public, we're not going to have public feeling like they're involved. I don't think that it has to go out until March of next year, but I think we need to not an appearance of that we've already got our mind made up and we're going to slam dunk this by November. But if we're going to pay for an election, we're going to pay for an election, no matter when it is.
And to that point, let me opine, because there's been some confusion about whether we can do this in a special election, because there is some language in here that says it has to be a general election. That only applies if we didn't go through this public study committee process. So we can adopt the optional plan at a special election, and then move forward for the transition at the next general.
Can I suggest that this committee assigned Jeremy and me to come up with a timeline? We got short-circuited because of the county attorney's work on this, but I would encourage the committee to think about kicking it back to Jeremy and me and letting us try to put something together
And
that's more realistic.
I would like to clarify that I didn't do this for you, actually. Chris Baird, the clerk, asked me to do it because he started getting really worried about the election. So I actually prepared this in support of Chris, so you guys can do your own deadlines as much as you desire. So feel free, no offense, but I didn't do it for you.
Okay.
Do it for Chris.
I'm hurt.
Marcy?
I fully appreciate Cricket's desire to get this taken care of, and there is the danger that if it drags on too long, people will lose interest. However, I believe that we need to take more time than the reality of this calendar, and I think we put all our eggs in one basket, and then if it's not right, then we're really behind the 8 ball.
So my thoughts are looking at cricket, because looking at cricket myself, I think that I'm more prone to split the difference. I don't think we could have a vote on any type of deadline this time. So my suggestion would be to put it on for next week. If possible, I would encourage Mr. Greenberg and Jeremy to contact or talk to set out some deadlines so we can get it going, because having a deadline to have a deadline is troublesome. So I would move that we have this item for next time, and then we can move on to the other items to keep business going today,
As a suggestion.
as I suggested. Yeah.
And Bob, I have no issue with you getting the spreadsheet of this so you can work on it. The one I sent you this is slightly updated from that. So then you guys could take that and run with it with your own dates.
That'd be great.
Well, then
Marcy?
I think too, these are deadlines created by statute,
Mhm.
but I think we need to include in this picture, what is our deadline for the survey? You know, what is our committee deadline for summarizing the public input? When does the open house, where does that fit in?
Agreed.
All those kinds of things we've talked about.
Yeah, we're not going to see an advertising plan until our next meeting. So,
Well, and the real, honestly, the reason we were being pushed was, Gavin was being a little pushy with the fact that he thought that the legislature might dink with it some more next year if we didn't get it done by November.
Okay.
And his fear was they would come back with something. But, you know, the risk is the risk.
Anything else on this issue?
So to clarify then, we will have this
Yep.
on next Friday's
We will have this on
agenda
next-
To
yeah.
adopt a timeline.
To adopt a timeline, correct.
Be good if you could get it to me in time for the packet.
well, Jeremy's out of town today, but I'll leave him a message.
The next item that we have is consent agenda action items. Seeing none, I have a point of inquiry. Ruth, is there anything, I've glanced through everything else in the packet. Is there anything else that we need to vote on? Because I have to escape, unfortunately.
Well, so we have the flyer coming around. I think Marcy's got.
Yeah,
the bulk
I
of
took a
them.
whack at it,
Marcy, you want to
see if I got it right, or closer.
Because we tabled that temporarily, could we vote on that and then appoint a chair to take over for me? Because I unfortunately have to leave.
You did this while we were just now?
I think I got
You want to
closer.
pass it around?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'd be happy to.
I took one.
So, Mr. Chair, to answer your question, there is a possible action
It can be moved to.
regarding,
Survey?
okay, regarding the report on the question, the interviews.
That can all move. Our report on that and the survey can go till next Friday without any problem. He's got it.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
As far as I'm concerned.
Is it closer?
Yeah,
Good.
behind.
Are we I'm sorry, are we
So we're gonna-
untabling the one?
We're gonna untable.
Moving off the table.
Yeah, moving off the table. I'm trying to find its letter.
F.
F. Untabling, approving final modifications to the formally accepted flyer as an informational handout for engaging voters continued from April 19th. We've had edits that have been done by Councilmember Greenberg.
I would like to add just
Cricket.
one little thing, if just see what you think. In this box right here, how about behind that, we would say, we would greatly appreciate your help.
I think it's great.
Because then that's asking, I mean,
yep.
it's just, we need to know.
Yeah.
Is one thing, but how
I think-
about we greatly appreciate your help or your input?
We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah,
And,
Marcy.
other than that, I like it all.
sorry.
Marcy.
Oh, so we need to know what you think works well. I don't think it would hurt to reiterate or to put in that box, contact us in that box with, we need to know what you think instead of down at the bottom.
Well,
You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
I think it's,
Cricket just suggested we add, we would greatly appreciate your input up in that box.
so then that will get them farther, that we want their information.
Does that work for you, Marcy?
The
I think-
ones I
I think
hand out, I'm going to highlight, contact us at,
My playing devil's advocate here.
yes.
On the different forms, is that enough information? Because I mean, they don't know the difference between what's expanded, what's count. I mean, we're not trying to murder them with too much information, but one of the originals had more information. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Don't those links get you to that?
Right, so maybe for more information,
Yeah.
Bob, make that bigger, like, for more information.
For more
About any of it.
information on the above choices,
On our choices?
yeah.
For more
About
information
Options.
Yeah,
on our options,
yeah. Option,
And is our current form of government no longer allowed? It's no
That's
longer
correct.
Yes.
legal?
that's
Yes.
correct.
It's,
In compliance, what is that, what I
We're
put?
outlaws.
I know.
Actually,
So that's
Mr. Baird would argue with that. So, just FYI.
yeah, I think,
He has
I think
corrected
you
me to
got
say
some
that
room here.
we are in
Maybe
compliance.
center it, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I
No, it's
put
not-
has
Yeah,
been
yeah,
deemed.
Yeah, but I just think, I think we say we need to know, but I think we're saying, you know, we greatly appreciate your input. Kind of draws them in, like, oh, well, I should get involved.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
So, can I make a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Are you gonna put a
Sure.
line on this side?
Are you gonna box it? She wants to
It's gotta
box
be
it.
prettied up. I mean, this is
This
for
is just a
content.
rough draft.
This
All
is
caps,
content,
highlights.
whatever.
Okay.
Flashing lights,
So, Bob, you want to make a
dancing
motion?
girls. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve, version, what did we say it was? 4 of the flyer, subject to being cleaned up by the council administrators, talented staff.
Do I have a second?
Well, let's say what that cleanup is. So I've got the sentence in the.
Well, just,
box.
just,
Oh, go ahead. for the
just
second.
graphically,
Put
this
a
is,
border.
Yeah, put the border.
Oh,
Center it.
Formatting changes.
yeah, formatting changes.
Formatting and layout changes without
Yes.
changing the overall substance of the
Or
flyer.
or the content. We've got the content.
But there are some additions to the
Yes,
content.
we add to the box, we need to know what you think works well with our current system of government and what needs improving, period. We would greatly appreciate your input, period. Down in the next section, we make for more information and we add on our options, semicolon, and we make that bigger, that print bigger.
Got it. And I see one little typo, county executive dash and then an underline.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
no,
fix that.
that
Yeah, and
goes with it.
For the voters to vote up or down at the ballot box is kind of,
It's not our choice, though.
well.
It's
That's
not a
what it
yes or
is.
no.
That's what it
vote.
is. That's exactly what it
It's not a
is.
yes or no vote, is it?
Yes,
It's approve or
It
deny
is.
the
It-
plan.
That's right.
So I would say for the voters to approve or deny at the ballot.
up or down's a lot
box.
shorter.
And do you make a recommendation for the voters or to the voters? No, that's silly, but
Well, it's for the voters to vote up and down.
that just feels awkward to me, but probably no one will really read it. Quite frankly.
Is there a
I just
second?
think it looks
Just gotta let
Do we have-
Steven get out of here. you
Do we have
guys.
a, do we have a
I'll
second?
second so Steve can go.
No, you don't have a second for me to go. It's a second on Bob's motion to accept revision 4 with the aforementioned changes
And with
and
formatting
formatting
correction
and
by staff.
spacing without changing the overall substance and content. We have a second by Cricket. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Let me give this to you.
Nay. Passes unanimously. 5-0.
We are on it. We are getting it done.
So we can start getting it out.
So
I'll send you the clean
the
copy.
process so I'd move a motion to, we need a pro tem chair.
Oh, yeah, you can just ask for,
Okay.
you can't make a motion. Well,
Okay. Who would
I
like to be
make a
pro
motion
tem
that
chair?
Bob take over for pro tem.
I apologize. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Everyone except for Bob.
Bob's in favor.
Bob's in favor. Bob's in
Okay,
favor.
unanimous.
Doesn't know it.
Thank you. Where are we?
We're on.
M?
We're
Review.
on. No, M.
Yeah, M. We're on M, discussion items, review of State Code Title 17, Chapter 52A, Part 5, adoption and implementation of optional plan. County Attorney Sloan.
Okay, the good news is there isn't much about part 5 that applies to you guys. 5011, the first part of this applies. If the county or district attorney finds that a proposed optional plan does not violate a statutory constitutional provision under Section 1752A406, now go down to the second part of 1B. An election may not be held for the optional plan until the county legislative body adopts a resolution to submit it to the voters and the county clerk certifies it. Oh, but see, under subsection 3, that's why this is so confusing. Subsection 3 doesn't apply to us because we have the study committee process. So never mind. This one doesn't apply. Let's skip to 4.
One does not apply.
1, 2, and 3 do not apply to us. And that's where there's some discussion in 1, 2, and 3 about the general election. None of that applies. Okay, so 4, though, does. The county clerk shall prepare. So basically 4, 5, and 6 all apply to us, but those are duties for Chris Baird to carry out. That's all direction to Chris. Not too interesting for us. What is interesting is subsection 4 is this up or down vote, right?
Right.
Shall we adopt this alternative form of government known as blank plan? So everyone's voting it up or down. And then section 5 requires the optional plan be adopted by the voters if a majority approves. So it's just a standard majority vote.
Question about that, if I may, Mr. Chair? So if the electorate approves the form, did you say then they approve
It's
the plan?
No, so the plan will have a name, and it's.
And I suggest Kenneth.
By plan, do you mean the at-large and the districts and the part-time and all
Right,
that?
but
Or do you mean one of the 4 forms?
No, it's
No, it's a
all
plan.
the details.
It's all of it.
And so all of that is one
Optional plan.
one ballot.
It's
one
one
ballot.
question.
Mhm.
And it'll be
So-
captured by one title that we have to,
Right,
we
so-
will call the optional plan something.
So the form of government includes the optional plan, and it's one body that the voters are gonna say. yay
Say,
or
yes, we
nay.
want it, or no, we don't.
And it
Well, okay,
includes
so-
salaries and the implementation plan and the
And none of
whole
that will
nine
be on the
yards.
ballot. The
No.
ballot question is very simple. And then what 5 and 6 do is talk about what Chris has to do to educate the public.
Right.
Which is where when the voters can come in. And there's going to be our voter pamphlet, and there's going to be postings in the paper, and there's going to be postings on the website. All that is described in 5 and 6. That's all the clerk's office's responsibility. Right. So the question on the ballot is quite simple. That's your subsection 4.
Cool.
501. Okay, moving down to 1752A 503. I had an epiphany today when I was looking through this again, that all of our county officers, not just the county council, has to be reelected in the general election after the optional plan is approved. If you guys approve, so that's a massive waste of resources, in my opinion.
Couldn't, as part of the implementation plan, we call out that the existing elected officials serve out their current terms?
I think we can, but
Otherwise, we can get lynched.
that's something, I think we can, but that's something we'll need to make sure is consistent with statute. I don't know.
That'd be
But I
horrible.
was always picturing it was just the county council that would get reelected at the next general. And when I read it today, I was like, oh dear, all elected county officers shall be elected at the next regular general election. So that's pretty big unless we can grandfather in some of the terms. What's frustrating about that too is I don't think you want to change up any of the staggering terms. So for example, county attorney, I would be running in every 2 years for 2 years, it would be pretty obnoxious. But it is what it is. Just keep that in mind.
It doesn't, you're talking about 1752A 5031A? Is that the language you're looking at?
5031A.
Because it just says the elected county officers specified in the plan.
Well, yeah, but you need to specify that all of us will still be elected unless, for example, you're going to change, say, clerk auditor to be an appointed position.
Yeah, but wouldn't one interpret this as saying only the ones that we specify shall be elected the next general election
No,
are
this
so
is
elected?
all of your county officers that will still remain elected, period, in a general
Okay,
sense.
okay.
You know how the state statute actually allows us to appoint some of our officers?
Right.
That's not how we do it. If you guys change that up, then obviously, say, a clerk auditor who gets appointed, he wouldn't run again. But all of the county officers who will remain elected officers in your plan, which who knows, but I would assume that's everyone. I don't see us changing that up. That's up to you guys, though. We'll have to address it, whether we can grandfather them in to their regular term, or term as elected.
I recommend that's the first question we ask whenever we hire a council.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's the
Your
first
council
question
should
we
look
answer
into it.
them.
Obviously, I'll
Yep.
be looking into it too, to make sure if you guys do that, that's consistent with state code.
That's
That's a biggie.
That's a biggie.
When we
these
first,
are really big questions, and I don't see this group figuring them out in an hour or two meeting every 2 weeks.
Well, that's a legal question as
Yeah,
well.
it's a
So
legal
you're gonna
question,
want legal
Marcy.
counsel.
Yeah,
we're not gonna figure
We're
that
not gonna
out.
figure that out.
We
They
need
just
to
say
know-
yay or nay.
We need to know this even before we affect our timeline.
Yes.
This would be critical.
I mean, let's say you don't get it onto the ballot until the next general election,
Just 2020.
right? Then you would be electing new officers 2021.
In a special election.
No, in a general. So it says the next regular general election.
That would be 2020.
So I mean, that also, when you're talking about your time frame, I mean.
That's
talk
why
about-
I think we need to
talk
try to
about
get it on
dragging
there,
out.
because it needs to be the next general. And if we don't hit this, then we're gonna be dragging that out.
You'll have lame duckers for a whole year on the council.
That's right.
Which will be a bummer.
That's why I think we need to work on trying to
Right.
get her done.
None of the rest of that's too interesting. And none of
Yeah,
the rest
so
of
this
it's
is-
a concern of y'all's.
Isn't this a conflict in the law? Because it says,
Oh, those
the
never
county-
happen, Bob.
huh?
Those never happen.
Yeah. Well, the county officer specified in the plan shall be elected next regular general election following the adoption of the plan.
Right.
The
So if
plan,
you,
we have till March to adopt a plan.
Mhm.
It would then go to the next general election, which would be
No.
2000.
you could do a special election.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we could, if we adopt in March, we could get it on the ballot for 2020
Let's say you did it at the primary, same time as the primary,
Okay.
June.
in June. And then any officers that need to be elected could be elected at the general.
Yeah. And that seems like your best case at this point, because if you go all the way to November 2020 to adopt the plan, you have a whole year where people are sitting lame duck style in seats until the next election, and that's too long, I think. But that's up to y'all.
Thank you.
That's why I'm kind of, so we don't have to do this twice.
Yeah.
Break it out.
I guess the only other thing to talk through, in my opinion here, is the proposed optional plan becomes effective according to the optional plan's terms. Now, it needs to be effective before the next regular general election, clearly, but that's another thing that you guys will be addressing in the plan. And the rest of this part 5 doesn't, you guys don't need to be concerned about it. No, because that's about amending and repealing later once you get your new council. This is how, if they're upset about it, they can deal with it. Okay, I think my time here is done. You guys
Thank
need
you.
me for anything else?
Thank you, thank you.
You've been lovely.
Well, thank you, Judy. You too. I
I
love
don't
sitting
think
next
so.
to you.
Thank you,
All right, thank you guys.
Christina. Okay, any other discussion on M? And we're on to discussion and possible action on study strategy, item N, as in Nancy. Report on results from interviews. We've provided, admittedly, after the packet came out, a summary of our interviews and a list of who we interviewed. You want to?
Bob and I interviewed 25 or so people,
Thank you.
and this was an amalgamation of what we found out in the process, and it's something you need to read, and then we'll discuss it whenever the next meeting is.
Yeah, I just want to say that all of the interviews really were very thoughtful and considered. They
Yeah,
were
we have a wonderful staff at the county too.
Yeah.
You know, the people that were interviewed were great.
they'd all read Gavin Anderson's outline. Many of them came in with it in hand. And the elected officials as well were thoughtful, and it's a lot of experience. We did have one former clerk auditor who requested to be interviewed, which we did. we invited 4 former council people to be interviewed, but we're only able to schedule 3. And we had a good time.
Well, kudos to you all, because you all were really, made it easy and comfortable and fun also, in my experience.
So we will put this on our next agenda as well, once everyone's had a chance to read it. And by the way, there was feedback on salary and part-time, full-time, district, no district, commission, council. People had thoughts on all those things.
Yeah, that, after they read it and if we bring it back next week, then they can ask us questions about it too. If you have any questions about it.
We didn't have to use bamboo splints on any of them.
Oh, there was that one guy.
Oh, yeah, well, I wasn't going to bring that up. Item O, as an orange, approving proposed survey.
Well, I put in the packet the sausage making that we went through. The girls and I got together, and that's where we started with, and this is where we ended up on our survey. It's very short, very simple. We thought it would work well for like at an open house or something where you could kind of get a feel for what people were thinking and could be an opportunity to educate them as to what we're doing. But we couldn't see any reason to make a 20-question survey and make it your life's work to fill it out.
We have the 4 main questions that we need answered.
This is what we need answered.
And then we wanted them to, which is the most important. We felt like make them think about it. You know, like number 1's your best choice, number 4 is
That's
your
great idea.
worst. That way you kind of get an idea more so.
And this is a companion piece to an explanation of the 4 choices, and that's, that's assuming people want information about what the details are on each of the choices.
And we thought too that we could have it be a trifold, and we have our return address and their address, and if they wanted to remain anonymous, they could like scratch through their address or cut it off, and we could condense it so that they could mail it back in.
I'm hearing 2 different things here. That this is intended to be used face-to-face in a workshop and mailed out.
So I think our primary target were the voters,
Yes.
registered voters.
The registered voters, county employees. We could even send this out like through the school district, whatever. But
Actually, if we're passing it out at a
open house.
open house, it doesn't have any addresses on it at all.
Yeah.
And people who are more comfortable in that form can just do it. But, just some way of getting back information as to what people are thinking.
I do think people should have to show proof of residency somehow before you hand in the survey.
Kind of why we don't want it emailed out. So that you just can't be blanketed to everybody who doesn't, maybe this is their second home, they live here.
And I think this could come back in next week and we can discuss it with
Everybody.
Walt and the others.
Yep.
I think there were 2 feet here, and we were all 3 involved in it, so it would be better to bring back the other people and just redo this.
Is that a
This is
motion
not a
to
hurry.
postpone this item?
Yes.
That's what I would like to.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion to postpone item O to our next meeting, and a second discussion. Marcy?
Well, it would be my hope that if we could have 1 or 2 open houses where we invite the public to come and meet with study committee members, and in a more informal situation, solicit what their concerns are. Like Eve came and said, my concern is power, blah, blah. But that What we really want to get at is what number of elected officials and what form of government do people believe is going to serve the county best? So,
But it shouldn't be 1,800 of this and 1,400 of that. My idea with the open house was that people who are locals are going to come to an open house. You're not going to have all of the people from Arches National Park coming to that kind of a meeting unless we serve goodies.
It's hard enough
can
to
do
get, it's hard enough to get voters whose future is at stake here involved.
We can
People
serve
who
cookies.
aren't, I don't,
Yeah, if we don't give them food, we'll be all
Well,
right.
who are we worried about?
I'm worried about people who don't live here. Yeah.
What people might be so interested, even though they don't live here?
Well, I can tell you that, like, when I ran for city council, there were 18 people registered in one home for community rebuilds. They don't live here. So. they
Oh, the
were-
clerk must have thought they did.
Well, they were here for 6 months. They're not going to be here in the future where this form of government is going to be imperative to them like it will be to us.
But they were registered voters, so they would be included.
But I'm also worried about people who don't live here that are like, that we talked about not sending them out
Mhm.
to property owners, because a lot of people, this is blah, 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 overnight rental. And they probably be more worried about how it's going to affect their business than how it's going to affect our government. So that's my concern. We don't want to send them out to people who are actually living in our community who aren't going to be affected by this. That's my concern.
You want it to go just to vote to the
The
voters,
registered
to the
voters.
registered voters.
Or people like the schools, people who work here, the teachers, the
Well, they have to be
law
registered
enforcement,
voters.
yeah.
They would be registered voters.
It's easy to mail to registered voters.
that's what
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Well, that's. the
Expensive,
clerk's
but
That's
easy.
why I don't want to email them out where they can just be sent out.
Yeah,
Hey, fill this out and send it in.
If-
Choose this. And
If you'll remember, I gave a report some meetings ago that a postcard, and this could be put on a
That's what I
postcard,
think too.
but you'd have to put it in an envelope, so you'd be looking at probably $2,000. No, about $3,500 to mail out a return postcard to every registered voter, or to every household in which there was a registered voter. Now, if you're going for every registered voter, it's quite a bit more expensive. You're looking at 50 cents for the envelope and 33 for the postcard. You're looking at 88, say 90 cents for 4,000 voters. You're looking close to $4,000.
Well, we were trying to save the committee money, and we thought that we could just run it through a copy machine. The treasurer has trifold. Peel off the labels, stick them on, and mail them ourselves. Then all you'd have would
But
be
you're
the.
still gonna have the stamps.
Yeah, the
Stamps.
stamps are what's the expense here.
And yet, how do we get them back?
Well, you could design it like the ballot so that it is, you fold it a different way and it comes back.
That's right.
That could be done.
That's what we talked about.
Mr. Chair, there is that motion on the table to postpone
Yes.
this, but I would like to be able to provide some input at some point. It doesn't have to be right now.
Well, we're having kind of free-ranging discussions,
I
so
see
jump
some-
in.
I see some
Jump in.
correction. So the word administrator does not exist in law anymore, or never did, really. So you wouldn't want to say commission and expanded commission and then council with elected administrator.
Manager,
That is not the right
all right.
terminology. You want it to match your four forms. County executive dash council is what is stated in state code. And then council dash manager is the
Good
fourth
point.
form. So that's one thing. And then where, on number 2, where you say circle number, ideal number of elected officials on commission or council, 3, 5, 7, or 9, you cannot have 9 on a commission.
Right.
So there's just some tricky little things here.
Well, we're not exactly.
Well, and what the truth is, we took these questions off of other people's and we picked the ones we liked. So let's blame that other people. Let's no, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
But I wouldn't be especially concerned about
And no,
that.
I don't, yeah, it just needs to be done right.
I mean, we're going to get some answers that we can't use. We know
Yeah,
that, no
yeah.
matter what we ask. Someone will write on the bottom,
But we're really not having an election.
No.
So if somebody wants to give us 50 of them, it isn't really gonna make them any difference.
Yeah.
Because that isn't the goal. The goal is to find out what will best serve the county going forward, and do as little harm as possible.
Well, one of the suggestions that, again, I go back to Eric Gov't makes, is that we ask for kind of more free-form feedback on what's going well and what needs improving. That creates a big job to read all those and try and summarize them.
Well, that's the people that have come to the public meetings.
Okay.
May I offer something there? So remember that they're not mandated to change their form of government, and they have to show what's going well and what's not, and they have to show reason to change, where we are mandated to change. So our purpose is different than their purpose.
I think that's what we came down to here was, okay, we don't have a choice. We have to change our government. And yes, I would love to listen to whoever responds, what they think is working and what they think isn't. But what are we going to do with that information?
Well, when you look at
how does that inform our recommendation?
When you look at our report next week, those are basically the questions we asked. We got great answers.
Yeah, we got great answers.
So we can think about that next week or as you read the report. We asked two kinds of questions. We asked, in your experience as a department head or elected official or council member, what's worked well, what needs to be improved, and then we also asked, if you were king, if you had your druthers, what do you see as the best way forward? And we got great answers on both of those. But anyway, you read it.
Well, and Marcy had talked about the college said that any more than a certain amount of questions, you lose interest.
Yep.
And we felt like we had 4 major questions.
No, I think that's great.
And then what we didn't want them and we tried to write it so it didn't try to influence their answer. That's why we said, 1 through 4 or circle 1 or circle, or what do you think? And the reason why was so that they have to think about it, they can't just give a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having to maybe they don't know. So this is maybe we down here at the bottom we put our website for more information then they could go there and see what is the choices, what's the bottom line. But we were trying to make it as easy as people, because some people are so busy they're not gonna. I know I've got something in the mail that I gotta read that. I'll do that later and get too busy and don't read it. So less is more. Maybe we'll get more answers if there's
Simple.
Well, at an open house or a public meeting, people, if every question's different, they have to read it. Otherwise, if you have 4 true and false things, then they're going to say, what do you want to do? 3 trues and a false. Got it. This is what we were trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Very good. So there's a motion.
Sorry, do you think there's any advantage to conducting these open houses or in particular areas of the county? So, for example, do one at the Old Spanish Trail Arena. Do one here. Maybe do one in the north end of town somewhere.
That's a great idea.
Feel like
Neighborhood.
This is my neighborhood, I'm more likely to come out if I only have to drive a mile. For me, to drive a mile instead of 5 miles, I might.
I think that's worth considering.
Well, we have the Water Conservancy
Yeah.
down
Right.
in our area.
That's what I was
Very well
thinking.
Yeah.
done. We had, very well, their room is nice size. We have this place, we have Grand Center.
That pretty well covers, other than Castle Valley.
And I think it might be nice to try and do a couple of those, that they'd be a little smaller, people would have more access.
That might be Castle Valley.
It's more work on our part, but I think it would really show the citizens that we are reaching out to you.
It would be different too. I mean, that's not a process that's.
Castle Valley, they have a place for you.
Yep.
If we're racing up against the 8th of June, it ain't even gonna make it. We're gonna have the people who are trying to make a living, and it's gonna be a bunch of us old age probates out there doing it. Many of you out there running the meeting.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to postpone the matter of of the survey until our next meeting. Is there any other discussion? I think it's been helpful, just to freewheel a bit.
Good question.
Okay, there being no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. The motion is postponed until the 17th. Public hearings, there are none. Future considerations.
Do you want to say the item, or you want me to say it?
No, it's the P, as in Peter, review of available salary information of county administrators for commissions and councils, county managers, and elected executives with veto power in Utah County. In Utah. County Council Administrator.
So
Dillon.
you may recall when you and Judy interviewed me, Mr. Chair, that I suggested that you all might need that information when it comes to the actual plan, because, and I believe Tuella County mentioned their budget and how it changed significantly, because it does make a difference. And I don't know if the voters, they're going to want to know that as part of the plan. They're going to need to know that. But so I'm offering my services to see if I can gather that most current information, which is probably going to be at least a year old. But there's only 8 of us in the whole state, so it's not going to be a big job.
That's interesting you should bring that up, because I asked Howard at KCMU, who's doing an interview on Monday.
Marcy?
Oh.
Just pull it into your
Howard
face.
on his public affairs program Monday at 5 p.m. is sitting down with Jeremy and Walt, and I asked him if he had any questions ahead of time, and the question at the top of his list is, what is this going to cost? What is this going to cost the county? And I said to him, quite honestly, we're in the process of figuring that out, but that people who really want to be informed want to understand, if we go with X and we're going to pay them this amount, how does that differ from what our current obligation is?
I think that's a great issue. That's one of the things that we did discuss as we interviewed people, and I think there was a pretty consistent view that we should not increase the overall administrative budget of the county, whatever we do. So we decide on more people, we pay them less. We decide on less people, we could pay them more. If we save money in this room, we could add resources to that office, and vice versa. So let me say in closing, since we don't have a closed session, that one thing Judy and I kind of committed to everyone we spoke to is we really will try not to mess things up for you here. And also our confidence in this committee, that we would do a good job. This would end up with a process that would actually improve things, would not make anyone's job harder. And there was some sighs of relief when we said that.
Well, we got a really wide range of fees, from what the county council is being paid now. We had a pretty big span of stuff. So, but we're trying to be cost effective all the way.
So there not being a need for a closed session, I believe. Is there any objection to adjourning? There being none, we are adjourned at 1:43. And we'll see you next Friday.
And we'll see you next Friday.
If not sooner. Whew, you're working a lot.
We're in the process of buying 4 new machines.
Whoa. No, you want a copy? I think that could be arranged. Somewhere here, I've got